Hey everybody, I'm Jack Reed with Future Pastimes. I'm a designer on Dune expansions for the classic Dune board game, the 2019 edition from Gale Force 9. And in this video, I'm going to be doing a review of Zoltan's Market expansion that is available on Etsy. And there is a link to that in the description. And this is an interesting idea for an expansion. So it comes with a lot of cards. These are all market cards. So the market card idea is actually something that we came up with for Dune Conquest. It's the brainchild of Jack Kittredge, one of the original designers of the original Dune board game. And Dune Conquest was meant to streamline all of the action and interplay from the Dune game into something that is fast and very accessible to new players. It's a gateway Dune is another way that I describe it. And one of the things that happened was the treachery deck was actually broken into two different decks. There was a battle deck of cards that you fill your hand up to 4 cards every phase. You're always going to have battle cards, and those are your weapons and your defenses. Couple of worthless cards, couple of special battle plan cards there. And then a separate market deck, and those were all of your one-shot card effects from the treachery deck, things like Hajar and weather control, stuff like that, was all moved over to the market deck. And you could just buy market cards for 2 spice each, and you could have up to 3 of those. So they were separate. So the idea here comes with a little rules card that explains, and it talks about the Dune Conquest inspiration, some recommended setup, and it talks about moving, only keeping a couple of cards in your treachery deck, so Karamas, Cheap Heroes, and Family Atomics, and everything else goes into the market deck. And this actually comes with all of the cards, including from the expansion. So there you can see reinforcements, one of the expansion cards. All of those cards have market deck backs, and so that's one of the reasons why there's 104 of cards, sort of a strange number. Part of it, I guess, is just it's 252 card decks. And that's it. And the rules here, the recommended rules are that after you do bidding, then you can buy market cards, which are always paid to the bank. 2 spice each, you can have up to 3 cards. So I haven't tried this out yet. I have played Dune Conquest, and we really do like that. The reason for it was to, again, to just streamline the action. The bidding is one of the longest phases in the game, so we decided to do away with that. And because it's only a game that's going to be 3, 4, or 5 turns at most, we wanted players to be able to get into the action right away. So they're going to get a hold of weapons and defenses right away, and you're going to make do with those cards. Certainly when you play them, they're going to be discarded in some cases, or you can keep them, but then people know that you have them. And since you're able to replenish so easily, a lot of times players will discard them just so that there's no card information. And in that game, the Atreides faction doesn't get to see what battle cards you are drawing or what market cards you are buying. There's none of that card knowledge in that game. The Atreides still gets to see part of the battle plan. That's the big faction advantage they have here. So one of the big effects, of course, with this is that there is no Atreides doesn't get to see the cards that you're buying in the market, and your treachery deck is now just primarily weapons and defenses and worthless cards. So you're much more likely to buy a worthless card if you're using the market deck. I do think this is interesting. I'll tell you what I do like about a market deck, even one that's absurdly large. The one in Dune Conquest is not that big, but should there be an expansion, one would expect that there would be a lot more market cards. There's no real downside to having a big market deck, because what it does is it allows you to add a lot of interesting, unique, one-shot effects, thematic, so a lot of thematic things in here, and it's going to change up your gameplay a lot and make it far less predictable. And it's an interesting way to get those effects in there, and since they are one-shot effects, you don't have to worry about something being overpowered, and that's nice. There are some things in here. There's a lot. I haven't really read every single card. There are a few things that I have recognized, which I'm going to show you here in just a second. There's a lot of stuff in here, and not all of it is necessarily stuff that would be treachery cards. So there's a few things in here that I thought were interesting, because this one, for example, it's all of these green card effects, but then you've got, this is a purple one, and it's got a, you've got the little hand icon up here. This one has more of a Mentat looking thing there going on. So this is Fanatical Tactics. It's an ability. So you play while battle plans are being made and place this card face up in front of your shield. While Fanatical Tactics is in front of your shield, you may either use 2 weapons or 2 defenses in your battle plan. And then whenever you lose a battle and you committed either 2 weapons or 2 defenses to the card, then you lose this card. So that is interesting, although there's not, that seems to be the only one of those that's in here. There are a few of these Mentat cards, also purple, and they actually have the little Mentat paws, bald guy there in the corner. So you play these during the Mentat pause, and during the next turn storm phase, all spice in one of the sand territories you choose will not be destroyed by the storm. This one is a different effect. Exchange any one leader you have in your reserve for one of your face-up leaders in the tanks, with some other stuff. Move up to 1 group of your forces into sand territory, to any unoccupied rock territory up to 3 territories. And then there's some of these that are send 3 regular forces to the tanks to gain 4 spice, stuff like that. So that's interesting. Would have loved to have seen maybe some more of these. Oh, there's one more ability. The Spice Lighter has a different ability. Couple things that I recognize, sort of internet. It does seem like Zoltan has scoured the internet for other stuff in here. There's the old Cone of Silence. Of course, this was in one of the Avalon Hill expansions. I never liked it, but, some people, I guess, do. They keep bringing it back. The Orange Catholic Bible as a worthless card, but it's, when you discard it, you may give it to another player whose hand limit permits it, and the Bene Gesserit cannot use it during this phase. It's an interesting idea, but there's a lot of other interesting effects in here. The few cards that I have read and looked at that I was like, oh, what does that do? And there's some Canley dueling as well, with some rules on how that works. So I do like this, but I wonder about some of the effects. So we'll have to try this out. I do feel like it maybe potentially is making that bidding phase longer, which I'm not a fan of. And then keeping your treachery cards and your market cards separately. I'm wondering about the impact to the Emperor, who's only getting paid for treachery cards, not for market cards. And because this recommended rules is you do your bidding first, then you buy market cards for 2 spice each, up to a limit of 3. I'm wondering if you should maybe combine your market cards and your treachery decks into one hand that still has a hand limit of 4, and maybe you do the market cards first. So you let everybody in storm order buy market cards, and maybe a limit of 3, or maybe however many you want to get up to your hand limit size. But let's say up to 3. You can only have up to 3. Then you do bidding. And I think one of the effects it might have on here that could speed up bidding, the whole bidding phase, is that some people might have a full hand after they've bought market cards. I'm like, you know what? I don't have a ton of spice, but I could get a market card or a couple of market cards. Maybe I already have a treachery card that is a weapon from earlier, or the one that you were dealt at the beginning of the game. And so now your hand is full. And you get to the bidding part, and you're not going to put as many cards up for bid. So it does speed that up. Will definitely have an impact on the Emperor. But maybe that's not such a bad thing. The Emperor is getting paid. I thought about the idea of, in Dune Conquest, we're not bidding, but we have the Imperium faction that gets paid when other players buy the cards. Now, Dune Conquest only goes up to 4 players. You would expect in Dune, if you're getting up to 6-player game, you have 5 players who are buying market cards, even if they only bought 1. That's 10 spice that the Emperor, if they're the ones collecting, would get for that, potentially up to 30. So every turn you'd be looking a lot of times at the Emperor getting between 10 and 30 spice, which is a little bit absurd. So maybe it is best that they don't get paid. Or maybe you take a page from the Tleilaxu every time somebody buys 1 or more market cards in a game turn, then the Emperor gets a spice from the spice bank for each time, including if they buy some as well. That might be interesting. So now you're looking at maybe up to 6 spice just for market cards. That might be interesting. But yeah, what do players think about this idea of a market deck? If there's a second edition of Dune, should they follow the example of Dune Conquest and say, yeah, we can have a lot more interesting effects? We do currently have a treachery deck that is 50 cards. Would people like the idea of, if I'm bidding on stuff, I'm more likely to get a weapon and a defense than I am like a harvester or a thumper. But then maybe I'm more likely to get a worthless card. There are worthless cards in here as well in this market deck. But in some cases, they do some strange things. Let's see if I can find a couple. So there's these worthless cards that are a little bit special. Yam, which is a holdover from the Avalon Hill expansion. But here, it's a worthless card, has no value. You can only be discarded by playing in your battle plan. But it says, if you are the Fremen, your leader, and your leader is killed and you lose the battle, your opponent does not receive spice for your killed leader. So it's not utterly worthless. And then we have a Fate. This is, if you're the Emperor, you will receive 1 spice for every 4th force you lost in the battle. I don't know about that one. The Sandworm Mural. That's a funny reference to the one of the worthless cards in Dune Conquest. If you're House Atreides and you do not have the Kwisatz Haderach yet, you may add +1 to your leader's strength in the battle for every 2 Shai-Hulud cards in the spice deck discard pile. I don't like having to shuffle through that. Maybe it would be like you can just add 1 more to your Kwisatz Haderach tally. But I like the idea of, these but there's only have these for the main base game factions. So none of the expansion factions get their own special worthless card. And I guess if they did exist, you would presumably only want to add in the ones for the game. Maybe not. I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter because you're not necessarily going to get your own. It's going to be pretty rare that you would. But yeah, getting back to that idea, what do people think of that idea? I can see, on the one hand, I can be like, that could potentially be pretty amazing change to the game, but it is a big fundamental change. And I think the original designers would be of mixed emotions. I don't know that they like the idea of monkeying too much with the classic Dune design. On the other hand, they did come up with this battle deck, market deck approach, so they could be more open to that in there. But it could have a lot of ripple effects. This could be a can of worms inside a kettle of fish, potentially wrapped up within a Pandora's box for Dune. And the Dune community is definitely of 2 minds. There's sort of what I call the old guard, which really only looks at Dune as the base game. They're used to that whole 30 years of that's all there really was, just those 6 factions, just those 33 treachery cards. That was how you played it. And they kind of look at it like chess. That's the only experience that they really want. They're not interested in the faction expansions or the new treachery cards or any of the other modules. But the new guard, of which that community, I think, is growing at a much bigger rate than the old guard community is. They're receptive to the idea. They like the idea of expansions. They like new factions, new cards, new effects. So anybody that would buy this on Etsy is much more open to that idea. And of course, I guess you would only buy this if you were going to try to have that experience of the split market deck. So I'd be interested to hear what people think. If you've picked this up too, chime in and let me know how you like it. And if there are cards in here there that you think are great, some that you think should be changed. Like I'm still not a fan of Cone of Silence. So I probably would not be keen to see that added in there. But there's a lot of interesting effects that you could have in there. There are a lot of internet treachery card ideas, some of which are great and some of which are terrible. But even the terrible ones could probably be tweaked enough to make them more palatable. And you could play around with this. I like the idea of you have the different types of cards, like the abilities and the Mentat cards, the not completely worthless cards. There's some ideas in there that I think would be worth exploring and developing further. So I recommend this expansion. I recommend you give it a day in court and see what you think of it. Try it out, because I'm really interested in hearing what everybody who does get it and tries it out thinks of it, things that they like about it, things that they have done to maybe house rule or adjust those rules as they see fit. Again, if we were going to split the game up, let's say that we did do this in a second edition, or maybe we offered it as an optional module, I'd really want to look at that mix of what is in the treachery deck and how that bidding for those cards works, and the effect on other factions. So there's no mention here, again, if Harkonnen buys a market card, getting another one. And then the card knowledge is very different. Atreides, if they're only seeing the bidding cards, they're going to get that knowledge on mostly weapons, defenses, and worthless cards. A couple other things like, oh, they've got a cheap hero, or they've got family atomics. But all the other stuff, including some of the other battle plan cards like reinforcements or harass and withdraw, are now market cards, which Atreides will have no card knowledge of at all. And it would be an interesting tweak to the Ixians as well. They're apparently having no effect on the market deck, so they are really looking at turns where they can have suppress certain weapons or defenses or worthless cards. It's a lot more concentrated in terms of what's in there. So that's what I'm most interested in. So that's it for this one. Check out the link, pick it up, let me know what you think. That's it for this one, everybody. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.